Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. I'm sitting in a boardroom here in the Mills Building at downtown El Paso. And I'm here today to have a conversation with Mr. Paul Foster, one of the most successful businessmen in El Paso's modern history and recognized as a wonderful philanthropist. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before just as you walked in, I mentioned I was told by Ron Acton and Jim Valenti many years ago, men that you know, that I should interview you. The problem is you've been such a whirlwind of activity, it's hard to work you in. And so finally you agreed if I would come up to your boardroom and would have a conversation.
Right. Glad to have you.
Okay, I want to focus on two things in this short 27 minutes or so that we have. Is one, I want to talk about you getting involved in being in business and being an urban redeveloper, and then talk about philanthropy. And some of these will weave together, I'm sure. Many years ago, I had friends that worked at a Texaco refinery, a Chevron refinery across the street, friends that worked at Farrah Manufacturing. My wife and I both worked at some time for El Paso Natural Gas Company or their contractors. She worked in offices. I did construction work like you used to do in your early days. And so I want us to focus on that. How is it that you, having your background and your major in college in accounting, how did you get into this business of redeveloping weakened or failed businesses?
Well, of course, the most significant one is the refining business. And I was actually employed by El Paso Refining, which was the predecessor to, or the company that acquired the Texaco refinery.
Right.
And they went bankrupt in '92, and the refinery itself was actually foreclosed on by some banks. And I put a business plan together, and the banks basically hired me to manage those assets for the banks. Mm-hmm. And then several years later, we put a deal together with Chevron to operate the two together. And then several years later, it just became apparent to me that neither the banks nor Chevron wanted to own these assets long term. So I started working on trying to come up with a way to buy them. Mm-hmm. And so I think my accounting background, it was because of my accounting background that I even had the opportunity. Cool. And then I think it helped a lot along the way, although most people in that industry are more from an engineering background. Then it's more typical to find engineers running those companies than financial people.
Well, obviously you didn't do all this by yourself. You had other investors that you got involved in this, or certain people that teamed up with you to do this, right?
No question. We put together a great team early on, and most of those guys I'm still involved with in one way or another. And you're right. There's nothing gets done by yourself.
Now, just recently, I interviewed Teresa Guerra, your executive assistant,
right,
about her Sun City Cats project. She's a wonderful volunteer for El Paso. And I said, let's make a deal. I'll interview you, and then you see if you can get me an opportunity to interview your boss. And she said, okay, it's a deal. And then we worked it out to come up here. So I do thank you.
I wondered how that came about.
That's how it came about. So thank you very much. It was a deal.
Okay.
You know how to make deals, don't you?
I do, yeah.
So it was a deal. Now, you just recently sold Western Refining after prospering very well with that business. Why did you decide to sell it?
Well, we were a public company, and we were approached by Tesoro, the company that bought us, and they made an offer that we sat down, and we were not for sale and really hadn't even considered selling. But when they approached us, we sat down and we said, you know what, this is the best thing for our shareholders, it's the best thing for the company, it's the best thing for the employees and the long-term viability of the company, and so we need to take a hard look at it. And the more we talked to Tesoro and the more we analyzed it, we thought it was the right thing to do. And so we didn't set out to sell it, but that's where we ended up.
Okay. Back in the 1960s, my wife and I began to manage apartment buildings for a man named Joe Yarbrough, that Yarbrough Drive is named after. He's very involved in politics and business and building divisions in the city. And one day he asked me, have you noticed on the other side of the freeway that big construction project going on over there? And I said, yes, I've noticed it. The freeway had not been finished through all of downtown yet. And he said, that's going to be Farrah Manufacturing's biggest manufacturing plant. And as it turned out, some of our friends ended up working there, people we went to church with. And they were prospering, and then things happened with unions and debates over everything and finances, and that collapsed on them. And it sat empty for many, many, many decades. In fact, he said, have you noticed there are all these garage door type things on the south side of the building facing the interstate? And I said, yes, that's because of trucking. Trucking is going to be very important with the interstates all opening up, and they just load up and they can go anywhere in the United States on Interstate 10. So we talked about that, and it prospered for a number of years. And you come back, you come to El Paso, and you notice that. The building's just empty, vacant, deteriorating. Now, what was it? Is there something about the way you think about not just starting a business, but reconstructing one that was successful, dies, and here you go again on the other side of the freeway? How did you do that?
Well, that was a little different. I wasn't interested in getting into the clothing business, so I wasn't interested in rehabilitating the Farrah business.
Right.
But I just looked at it and I thought it was the most valuable piece of real estate in El Paso. And you look at the way El Paso's population is spread out. There's 800,000 people in El Paso. 650,000 of them live on the east side. And to me, it was just a great opportunity to do a retail development. And I didn't know how long it would take or kind of how to put it together. And I hadn't done it before, so I had a lot to learn. But
there again, it took people to help you do that.
Right. And so the first thing I did is buy the land, and I just thought that it was a great piece of land and I wanted to own it. And so then we started trying to figure out who do we partner with and how do we put this thing together. And it took a long time. And when I bought the land was before the economy kind of went in the tank.
Oh, yeah.
In 08 and 09.
Right.
And so we just sat on it for a few years. There wasn't any big appetite from investors, from retailers or others to make big investments at that time. And so we kind of had to wait for the timing to get better. And then once it did, we started trying to put it together, and then we wound up with a great development.
Oh, it's called the Fountains.
Called the
Fountains at Farrah.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move downtown. Here we are in the Mills building. How did this come about that you got into redeveloping downtown?
Well, that was actually very similar to the Farrah thing. These buildings, there was a group of buildings. There was the Mills building, the Blue Flame building, and I forget the name of the one I ended up giving.
Well, you have
to
the
the
Plaza
city.
Hotel.
Right, the Plaza, that was separate, but I bought 3 or 4 buildings from one seller who just needed to get out from under them, and so that was how I first got involved. My first involvement in downtown was with the Plaza Theater, and I contributed some money to that. I wasn't actively involved in it, but I started looking at it saying, I just realized how important that was for downtown, and I started looking at this neighborhood and said,
I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that. I was
glad to do it.
I was on a committee in 75 and 76, the bicentennial U.S. Constitution, or Declaration of Independence, with Janice Wendell. And some of us talked about saving certain places like McGoffin Home and the Plaza Theater and so on, and then Janice and others took the leadership on all of that. And so, but it took people like you that could come in with some investments. What's her name? McGuire.
Right, Betty McGuire.
Yeah, and some of these others began to come in and say, we will help you financially. And now that is a linchpin of this downtown redevelopment.
That really was sort of the anchor to my thinking down here. And then when these buildings next to it came available, I bought the Mills, and then I bought the center next to it, and I bought the Plaza Hotel. And it takes a long time to kind of come up with a vision and a plan to redevelop them. But my view was I wanted to kind of concentrate my investments in a smaller area and try to really make it nice rather than kind of doing spot investments throughout the city. And then we had the opportunity to do the ballpark, as you know, and that wasn't without controversy, but it's turned out well, and I think that has done a lot to drive further investment in this area.
Oh, definitely.
And so, in addition to the Plaza Hotel that we're doing, you have other hotels. You have the brand new one that Jim Scherer's building. You have the DoubleTree that he did. You have Mr. Myers over here with the Camino Real, and so we have a lot of great hotel projects going on right now.
Oh, that's good.
Hopefully, the city will improve the convention center and do their part, build the arena. We're trying to bring soccer downtown, and all these things go together to just improve quality of life, improve the vitality of downtown, and starting to see more residential development downtown, and that's something that's very slow to develop in any city.
Right.
And but we're seeing more and more of that, and so that's exciting. And El Paso's on the move.
On the move. Okay, now let's move philanthropy. The Plaza Theater would be classified as philanthropy. It's benefited business all around here, but you were philanthropic getting into that. And then let's move out to another area that was deteriorated greatly around Jefferson High School. And some of that land began to be built. Was it J.O. Stewart and others were interested in developing out in there? And then you come along and you get involved in that, and you're definitely involved with education.
Right.
And you serve with the board of the University of Texas system. And so you get interested, especially in medical education. How did this come about?
Well, you mentioned J.O. J.O. was the first to kind of step in and make a big contribution. He contributed the land that the medical school ended up being built on. But a group of El Pasoans approached me and some people from Texas Tech, with the idea that they wanted to build a medical school, and they're trying to raise money, and they're looking for a lead gift, a lead donor. At the same time, we were all spending a lot of time at the Texas legislature trying to get the governor and the legislature to approve funding and give approval for construction of a 4-year medical school here. And so it was a community effort, but I agreed to make the lead gift, and that, I think, kick-started the whole thing, and here we are now. We've had our 5th graduating class, I think, and it's one of the finest medical schools in the country.
Oh, great. Well, you noticed I did not open the show by giving a list of things that you're involved in, contributions that you've made, and all that. It would take 30 minutes to go through some of those things. And without people that have an interest in, not just in making money and getting richer, but contributing to make for a richer community, quality of life.
Yeah.
And that's the way you view it?
It is the way I view it, and I think that the way I want to give back to El Paso, because I've had a great deal of success here, and I feel like I owe that. And it's not that it's an obligation, but I want to give back to the city that gave me these opportunities, and this is my home. I love it here, and I want it to prosper, and I want to make a difference. And my wife is very involved as well, not only in the things that we do on this side of the border, but on the Mexican side.
You should mention her name. Tell us who she is.
Alejandra de la Vega.
Yes.
So she's very actively involved in a lot of the philanthropic efforts on both sides of the border as well. And so it's just something that we take very seriously and are very proud to be able to do.
I graduated with a master's degree from UTEP. I was there doing my master's research when it was Texas Western. They changed the name just as I finished my degree. So let's move then to UT El Paso. I know that you've contributed there. What has been what you consider your most important philanthropic gift to UT El Paso?
Well, Jeff Stevens and I, Jeff and I were partners in Western from the beginning, and we jointly contributed for the construction of the Foster Stevens basketball facility that they built over there several years ago, and we've given other contributions for I can't articulate them, but we've given a few to UTEP, and UTEP is vitally important to this community, and I love the institution. I love Diana, and very, very proud to have been able to contribute to UTEP over the years.
Right. I don't know if I should ask this question or not, but I think I would ask it about myself if it happened that way. With the names on some of the buildings, Judson Williams, I remember him when I was at Texas Western, and he became mayor for a period of time and so on. And some people feel a little strange seeing their name up there. Does that make you feel strange seeing your name on some of these buildings?
It's kind of weird.
You're proud, but it makes you feel a little strange that they put your name up there.
Yeah. It's funny. I've had people. I went to Baylor, and I have my name on a couple of buildings there, and I'll go back there every now and then, and I'll meet students, and they're like, "Wow." Yeah, they're surprised that I'm still alive. They expect the people whose names are on these buildings to be long gone, and so it's always interesting to meet people.
Yeah, we have a building, a student services building, that says Alfredo de los Santos Jr. You've seen it probably, and some of the students were asked, and he showed up. He's alive. Same thing, same phenomenon.
Yeah.
How do you get your name on a building if you're still alive? Well, what are other areas that you find of interest to you with philanthropy? And then we're getting close to finishing up today.
Well, I mean, obviously higher ed is important to me, and that's where I've made my largest contributions. And identifying areas where people are really in need. The El Paso Food Bank is one that we've given a lot of money to over the years, and the American Red Cross. Of course, United Way. And United Way is this great agency that spreads it to 60 or 70 other agencies throughout the valley. The Children's Art Museum in Juarez is one, and the FMAP Foundation, which Alejandra's mother founded originally, and is a great charitable organization that provides health care mostly to women in Juarez. And so it's just when we identify a need, sometimes we just make an evaluation and
don't you always have to try to make the point that this is an international city? It's not just, there's Juarez, here's El Paso. And the image that some people have in other parts of Texas, that El Paso is a dangerous place, bombs going off in the streets and things like this. You remember those statements publicly by some of our public officials.
I certainly do.
And how do you approach that when people make those statements to you?
Well, I'm always very quick to point out that El Paso is perennially, every year, the safest large city in America. And also that those are FBI statistics, not Chamber of Commerce statistics. And that San Diego is generally the second or third safest city in America, and that's not a coincidence. We're on the border, and the border is not a dangerous place. And the numbers bear it out. And anybody that doubts it just needs to look at the numbers and not watch too much news.
Yeah. Now you do a lot of things with your wife in joint situations involving Juarez and here. Musical organizations, musical performances, dance groups. What about some of those that you and she are jointly involved with?
Well, most of the things that we're involved in across border, there's art organizations and of course FMAP I mentioned, in the Children's Museum, the zoo that we've been very active with the zoo here. There was an effort to improve and build a zoo in Juarez that her father was very interested in when he was alive, and it never did come together, but we put some time and effort into looking at that as well. Also, educational causes on that side of the border are important to us as well. And you're right. We look at this as a region. We don't look at it as one side or the other. Another area where to kind of bear out that sort of regional concept, we've both been very involved in the formation of Borderplex, which is a regional economic development organization that is involved with Chihuahua, Mexico, with southern New Mexico, and with this part of West Texas. And we look at it as a region. And the Chamber of Commerce can't do that. They have to look at El Paso by itself. And the same thing with the Chamber of Commerce in Juarez. But the Borderplex looks at it very regionally, and it's been very successful. And I think, our view is that a rising tide lifts all boats, that if Santa Teresa attracts some business, that benefits El Paso. If Juarez attracts a business or a factory or employment, that benefits El Paso. And the same with if something comes here, it benefits them. And so we've put a lot of effort into kind of trying to create that mentality that we're not competing against southern New Mexico or against Juarez. We're actually working with them to improve the region as a whole. And whether it's sports, baseball and soccer, we're involved with both of those. We think that it doesn't matter which side of the border those are on, they improve the region and create a better quality of life for everybody that lives here.
We probably should mention the Hunt family.
Right.
You work very closely with the Hunts with regard to a lot of these projects.
We do.
Such as the medical.
Right.
Okay.
The medical and these sports endeavors that I mentioned. They're a great partner. I have just the highest admiration and respect for Woody and for his family. And it's been a real pleasure to work with him in all these efforts.
Let me ask you a question on research. When I interviewed Dinah Natalicio, I've interviewed her twice for this program. Once was in the 50th anniversary of the 1966 basketball championship team. Got to interview some of those people on the program. When I asked her a question about the most important building that she thought she helped get money for, and you were on the board of trustees for getting money for some of these, was the research building. How'd you feel about that?
No, I agree with her. I think that to create a great university, and she's got just unbelievable vision, you have to have the research component. And UTEP has continued to exceed almost all of its peers in attracting research dollars, research expertise to come to El Paso. And it's remarkable what they've been able to do out there.
Now, you were chairman of the board of the UT system for a while, weren't you?
Right, I still am, for the last 4 years.
Okay, and even though you're not, you're still plugged in there, and you have to look at all the universities and what they're asking for and what they want to do to reach Tier 1 status and all of this. But I'm sure you must feel a little tug at your heart about, oh my gosh, I've got to help El Paso.
I do. And you said it well. I have to look out for the system as a whole and for all 14 of our institutions. But absolutely, I want to look out for El Paso and do as much as I can for UTEP while I have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the 1960s when there was competition for where they were going to put a medical school, whether it be Lubbock or El Paso. Mm-hmm. And then where they would put a law school, Lubbock or El Paso, and other facilities. And Lubbock seemed to keep coming out on top. And when my students were asking me, I taught in both places, in Lubbock at Texas Tech and here, and in fact in West Texas State up near Amarillo. And I would say, well, it has to do with politics. You students need to learn that politics is important. And in the Lubbock area, they had money. They had more ranchers and farmers. And then politically, they were more unified, and they ended up with getting a governor from Lubbock and speakers of the House over a period of time, etc. And I said, that makes a difference. Yeah. So you need to be aware of that. El Paso was twice as big as Lubbock for a while there, but they got these things. And then Lubbock, and I knew the chairman of the board of Texas Tech for one time, Roy Furr. I worked for a while for his son, Roy Furr Jr. and they knew how to do that game and go down to Austin and advocate on behalf of us. Now, El Pasoans are now doing this more than they used to.
Right.
And more unified delegation. You've been down there where they've been there during a legislative session and lobbying for money, right?
Correct.
So you do have to also know something about politics.
Well, I do, and it is political. I mean, I mentioned before when we were able to get funding and get approval for the medical school that we built here, we spent a lot of time in Austin, and we were united. It wasn't just our legislative delegation, but it was the business community. And we recognized that if we didn't go down there with an absolute unified effort, that we weren't going to get approved. And so our legislators came together, our business community came together, and we identified it as our number one priority, and we were able to get it approved.
Good. We have a couple of minutes left. Any in the last 2 minutes things that you'd like to mention in your vision for the future of El Paso? Give me a 2-minute vision of El Paso.
As I mentioned before, it's a great time to be in El Paso. I think El Paso is on the move, and particularly downtown El Paso is a much different place than it was a few years ago, and it continues to improve. And also look at Juarez across the bridge there, and what I would love to see is for that development to continue all the way up to the bridge and across, so that we become an international pedestrian community where people are comfortable going back and forth and going to bars and restaurants and shops on both sides of the border. And we're several years away from that, but I think we have a business community on both sides of the border that want to achieve that, and I think it's something that we can do together.
That's a good vision. I like that. Well, thank you for tuning in to El Paso Community College Television, Perspectives El Paso. Want to thank you for being on the program. It took a long time to get around to it, but we're glad that you gave us your time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Very much.
Thank you.
Tune in again for Perspectives El Paso.